Hello everyone, this is Dr. Davis and this is going to be your lecture on Unit 1, Module 2. These are our objectives for this module. So we're going to talk about fat this time, or lipids. We're going to talk about saturated and unsaturated fat, food sources, cholesterol, how fat metabolizes, and then we're going to start talking about protein and cover the same areas going through protein as well. Okay, so remember in our first lecture, I said the fats and lipids are basically the same term. They use them relatively interchangeably. Um, so fats or lipids can be talked about. If someone says that they have hyperlipidemia, means that you have high levels of fat in the blood, or that's considered high cholesterol. So fats are usually a greasy substance. It's not soluble in water. You know, if you've ever washed dishes after you fried foods, you can see that where the water and the oil separate. So same idea. They are a bit more concentrated source of energy than carbohydrates. Each gram of fat contains 9 calories. So that's slightly more than twice the content of carbohydrates. So the fat content, the calorie content is a little bit more. Um, Usually foods that have a lot of fat in them um, are a bit more expensive than your normal carbohydrates. Um, so we will talk about these as we go through. So fats are a concentrated source of energy. They aid in the transport and absorption of your fat-soluble vitamins. So remember we said A, D, E, and K um, are fat-soluble vitamins, and we have to have that in order to break those down. Fat is part of that cell membrane. It gives us padding in the form of fat, right? It helps to protect our internal organs. Um, it's needed for healthy nerves. It's in it can be a precursor for hormones. So when I say that, what I mean is, like in the female body, those of us that are a little bit heavier may produce a bit more estrogen due to the fat content that we have in our body. So your brain is 60% fat, so we need fat in our diet, so it is important. We just need to eat good fats. So there are a couple of different types of fats. They're saturated. Those tend to be solid at room temperature. So those are your butter, your dairy, um, coconut oil, um, palm oil, um, and then some of your other harder substances. Those are saturated. Your polyunsaturated are liquid at room temperature. And they are heat sensitive. And then you have monounsaturated fats, which are olive oil, almond oil, avocado, peanut oil, all those other types of oils. Um, so um, those are all kind of different types of fats. And then we need to remember that when we're dieting, remember I had said that if you eat something with some fat in it, it's going to leave you more satisfied than a meal that's a low fat meal. So fat is present in animal and plant foods, so both vegetables and in animal-based foods. So the ones that usually provide the richest source of fats as far as animal foods are red meat, um, higher fat poultry cuts with skin such as thigh and the wing. Um, Milk has fat in it because you can get reduced fat or skim. Cream, butter, cheeses egg yolks, those all have a lot of fat in them. Tuna and salmon have good fat in them. So typically, saturated fat consumed from animal foods raises that cholesterol, which can contribute to heart disease. So if you're someone that eats a lot of these red meats, then or higher fat content meats, then you may be at risk for some heart disease. Plant foods that contain fats are cooking oil, so olive oil, sunflower, sesame, corn oil, peanut, canola, soybeans, margarine, salad dressing, mayonnaise, nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut, cocoa butter, all of those are considered more healthy food sources of fat. Okay, saturated fat. So those are your meats, butter, and dairy products. They're solid at room temperature. These increase the bad cholesterol. So that low density lipoprotein is the bad cholesterol. You'll see that listed on labs as LDL. So LDL is bad, HDL is good. So our unsaturated fats are vegetable oils, so things that are liquid at room temperature, and those increase the good levels of cholesterol. HDL helps get rid of LDL. So if I'm someone who is eating something, maybe I am frying a pork chop. Um, so the best choice would be to cook it in a vegetable oil um, because that would help with some of the saturated fat. The unsaturated fat will help get rid of that out of the body. So um, those are all really good options when we're talking about what is the difference between these two. So while it's easy sometimes to see, physically see those people who have an excessive fat intake, um, will be someone that is overweight, right? I'm taking in too much fat, so I gain weight. So being overweight then can lead us to having high blood pressure, which puts us at a greater risk for having a stroke, a heart attack, heart failure, kidney failure, all those things from an increased amount of fat intake. So those people who don't have enough fat intake, they may show something, some skin disorders like eczema. So in the second picture here under deficient fat intake, that's a picture of a before and after of someone with some eczema. I'm not implying that if you have eczema, all you need to do is eat a higher fat diet. You would need to make sure that you're doing that as prescribed and speak to someone before you do that because that's not going to just fix it. And this is a severe case of eczema before and after, but I just wanted a good picture to show you that this is something that you may see in these people. And if you, it's possible that the physician will test every other thing and not think about nutrition wise. Should we worry about what are they taking in? What is their diet? So cholesterol, I love a good visual, so I found this little infographic and thought it was great. So it shows you over there your LDL is the devil and your HDL is the angel, right? So then you can kind of remember which way to, which one is good, which one is bad. So um, the cholesterol will float around in our system. We may have what's called hypercholesterolemia, which just means I have high cholesterol. And something that might happen is if you look at the very top picture, you see the artery on the left has got some buildup, some yellow buildup in it, and then the one on the right does not. So this buildup can start to form inside of those vessels. If that breaks free, then that's what can go to your heart, cause a heart attack. It can go to your brain and cause a stroke. It can go to your lungs and cause you to not be able to breathe anymore. So all of these things can happen when we're talking about cholesterol. So it's always important to not have when we're looking at blood cholesterol levels, it should not be higher than 200 milligrams per deciliter. Um, and we can reduce the amount of fat intake. Of course, we can change our diet, we can exercise, and do all those other fun things to improve our cholesterol levels. So this is a chart that is in your book. So remember yesterday we talked about a 2,000 calorie diet is what we're basing our our diet intake on. So this was a um, selection of food that the nutritionist said her son had gone and this is what he got to eat. So he got three soft tacos, three crunchy tacos, a nacho bel grande, and a large drink. So she broke it down by each one, how much calories are in each one, and then she totaled it up. So you can see for her son, he ate 2,100 calories for one meal. So young teenage males can get away with that. You can see where that would be an issue for someone as they get older. To continue to eat like this is not very healthy. But you can see how much sodium is in that, how much fat and saturated fat are in those as well. So talking about our digestion and fat. So fat is broken down mostly in the small intestine. It's not digested in the mouth. When it gets to the stomach, those gastric acids will start to break it down, but it doesn't break down very much of it. Okay, it's not until it gets into the small intestine when we really get what we need out of it. We have to remember that, fats and fat and water doesn't mix, right? So it takes a little bit longer for that to be absorbed into our body. Um, the body will then break it down and you'll end up with low density lipoproteins going to, and then the high density will both go to the liver to be processed, and then throughout the body for um, for it to be broken down and used in metabolism. Remember, it gives us some energy. Um, it breaks it down into small little pieces of carbon dioxide and water, and it's used in all the different systems of our body. So I'm not so concerned that you know all the minutia, every single detail of how it's broken down, but the major thing is it's broken down in the small intestines, for our body to be able to use it. Okay, so protein. Protein is super important because it helps to build and repair body tissue. So remember, in our first lecture, we talked about if you had an injury or had a surgery of some sort, it was important to have some really good quality protein um, to help repair those tissues. So that is very important. Proteins are important parts of hormones and enzymes in the body. They help with metabolism. It helps with digestion. It helps in our fluid and electrolyte balance. Um, and proteins can provide energy when you don't have enough carbohydrate or fat getting into your body. But typically, um, our energy comes from our carbohydrates and our fat. Every gram of protein provides 4 calories. So um, we usually don't want to try to spend our calories through protein. It's better for our body to use carbohydrates or fats for energy. So that's something that we need to remember because there are instances where people will have some protein wasting disorders. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Okay, so some of our sources of protein. So these are broken down into complete and incomplete proteins. And the reason being is those complete proteins are found from are made from animals. So meat, fish, poultry, eggs, milk, and cheese, all of that comes from an animal. Where our incomplete protein comes from um, soybeans and peanuts, peas, all those different kind of things. So if you were on a vegetarian diet where you did not eat meat, you can get protein from these other sources. They're just not as high of a quality as what you would get from an animal source. Proteins are broken down into amino acids, and they help to build and repair the cells. The protein is broken down further into nitrogen, and then that is used by the body in a different way. It's then picked up by the liver and is filtered out through the kidneys. Um, so those are a couple things to think about when we're talking about digestion. Um, those people that eat a vegetarian diet may not get enough protein in through those incomplete proteins. So we may have to work with them um, to get in another type of a protein source. Now I do want to add that gelatin. So anything that uses gelatin. So all of our Jello products uses a gelatin. That's the part of it that makes it form and have some substance. That is from an animal source. So we want to make sure if we are offering Jello to a vegetarian, um, they may not take it, and that might be why. So this slide tells us a little bit about protein excess versus deficiency. So we can have not enough, which is our deficiency, and these people may have muscle weakness, they may have thin hair and weak nails, and they may have some weight loss, there may be some brain fog. You might see this a lot in pregnancy. Women may not be taking in enough protein because now they're also growing a baby. So you may see some of these things during pregnancy. Protein excess, you can have some dehydration, definitely have some constipation. If you know anyone that has done a high protein diet, they typically are constipated. Um, you may have some kidney dysfunction because remember, our kidneys are what helps to filter out um, and excrete the excess protein. So that's something that we have to think about too. Um, Most of the people that have any kind of a protein energy malnutrition kind of a thing, um, those are people that um, we talked about yesterday, some of those children who don't have enough protein um, to sustain their life. Um, they may have some sort of mental issues. Those women that are pregnant that don't have enough protein during pregnancy can have the baby can have some impaired mental capacity. So we really want to make sure that we're taking in enough protein to support um, both mom and baby, or if this is in the case of a child. So it's very popular. A lot of people are choosing to go to a vegetarian diet. There are different types of vegetarians. Um, there's some that will eat eggs, but they um, do not eat meat, poultry, or fish. There's some that will use dairy products, but will not eat meat, poultry, or eggs. Then there's vegans. Vegans avoid all animal foods. So they only take in soybeans, chickpeas, tofu, some of the other things that look like meat, but they're not meat. So we need to be sensitive to that and try to support them as much as possible in their dietary choice. Vegetarian diets are very popular now, so you may come across um, having a patient that is a vegetarian. So it just depends on what type. It's going to be very important that you ask what type of vegetarian they are and specifically what they will eat. Some will eat nothing that comes from an animal. Some will eat eggs. Some will eat eggs and cheese. Some will eat just cheese, no eggs. So it really depends on what type of vegetarian that they are. If someone comes in and you're admitting them, they tell you that they're a vegetarian, really need to know specifically what they can and cannot eat um, to try to support them in getting the best um, protein that they can out of the foods that they do take in.